That afternoon, the pine forest on the edge of the small town of Red Creek was strangely quiet. The narrow dirt road wove between tall trees, the wind blowing just enough to rustle the leaves, the air thick with the scent of resin and hot dust. Nearby, a few shabby wooden roofs in the trailer park hid beneath the shadows of the branches, where working families struggled to get through each day. There lived a 7-year-old boy named Noah, barefoot with scratched knees, wearing an old t-shirt faded by the sun. That day, Noah wandered into the forest, chasing a green frog hiding under wild bushes. He had gone deeper than ever before, curious but also wanting to escape the shouting inside the trailer he called home. His mother, Jenna, was working a long shift at the roadside diner, while the drunken yells of the man who often came to their home still echoed in Noah's ears. The boy simply wanted a quiet place. But right at that seemingly forgotten corner of the forest, Noah stumbled upon a sight he would never forget. A huge man, covered in tattoos, wearing a black leather vest with a biker club logo, was chained tightly to the trunk of a pine tree with a heavy steel chain. His head hung low, his shirt torn, his arms smeared with blood, and a black Harley lay toppled nearby. Noah froze, his heart pounding. Every story he had ever heard about bikers, fights, troublemaking, terrifying entire towns, flooded back. But then the man let out a faint groan and lifted his head. His blue-gray eyes clouded with pain and exhaustion. In that moment, between fear on one side and childish compassion on the other, Noah had to choose: turn around and run, or stay and help someone the whole world warned was dangerous. If you believe in kindness, please like and subscribe and comment where you're watching from. The man who was chained was named Mark Steele Carter, the leader of a biker club called the Iron Ravens, well known across Texas for their black leather vests, full-sleeve tattoos, and the thunder of engines every time the group rode through town. But Noah knew nothing about that. To him, this was simply an injured man, breathing heavily, his hands trembling from being chained for too long. Mark had been ambushed by a rival biker group on an empty highway. They beat him, robbed him, wrecked his Harley, then chained him to a tree in the forest, leaving him to burn under the sun and face wild animals like a cruel sentence of revenge. Sweat and blood mixed with dust into dark streaks across Mark's rugged, unshaven face. Noah took small steps forward, still gripping a dry branch like a flimsy weapon. "Sir, are you okay?" he asked, his voice trembling. Mark's eyes opened slightly, deep and heavy, as if they had survived countless sleepless nights on the road. "Kid, you shouldn't be here. Go home. This forest isn't safe," he rasped. But Noah didn't leave. His fear of bikers, the terrifying stories, was overshadowed by the memory of his mother coming home with blistered hands from washing dishes, dark circles under her eyes, and an empty refrigerator. He knew what it felt like to be abandoned. "Can I help you with anything?" Noah asked, crouching beside the chain. He tried pulling, twisting, looking for the lock. Each clinking sound of the chain was a thin sliver of hope. Mark winced but managed a painful smile. "Kid, you're brave, but this chain won't budge." In the still forest, an invisible thread formed between a poor child and a biker who seemed ruthless, woven from a simple instinct of compassion. After a few minutes of struggling, Noah's tiny hands were bruised and red, his nails coated with dirt and rust. The lock was as solid as stone, unmoving no matter how hard he tried. The afternoon sunlight broke through the canopy, falling on Noah's thin body and Mark's large frame, creating a strange contrast: small helplessness on one side, the weight of a lifetime of mistakes on the other. "I can't leave you here," Noah muttered to himself. In his mind echoed the words of the drunken man who used to shout at him, "No one cares about you, kid. In this world, the strong live, the weak die." Maybe that was why Noah refused to turn his back. He ran around looking for anything that could help, but there were only rocks, twigs, and dry leaves. Mark exhaled painfully, each breath dragging a sharp ache through his shoulder and wrists. "Kid, listen, if someone comes back, you need to run. They're not like me." Noah swallowed hard. In the eyes of the 7-year-old appeared something strange. Determination. "I'll come back, I promise." Then he turned and ran. The path from the forest to the trailer park was nearly 2 miles long, dirt and stones cutting into his bare feet, thorns scratching his skin. Noah kept running, tears mixing with sweat. Near home, he slowed. If his mother found out, she would forbid him from returning. But if he didn't go back, the image of a man chained under the sun would haunt him forever. Noah quietly sneaked behind the trailer and opened his mother's old repair toolbox. He rummaged until he found a rusty hammer and a loose screwdriver. His hands shook. Not from fear of the man in the forest, but fear of being caught. Yet that fear was small compared to letting someone die knowing he could help. Clutching the hammer tightly, Noah headed back towards the forest, his small legs sprinting into the fading light. When Noah reached the spot again, the sun had sunk lower, golden streaks weaving through the pines, stretching Mark's shadow across the ground. The man looked worse than before. Dry, cracked lips, eyes half closed as if drifting toward unconsciousness. Seeing Noah burst through the bushes, Mark widened his eyes, both surprised and worried. "Kid, you really came back?" Noah panted, raising the rusty hammer. "I told you I would." He had no plan, no skill, only the stubbornness of a child who believed that doing the right thing must lead to a way. Noah knelt by the lock and began hammering it over and over. Each strike echoed clang through the forest, mixed with the hum of evening insects. His hands went numb, his wrist aching, but he clenched his teeth and continued. Sometimes he paused to run to the nearby creek, plunging his burning hands into the cold water, then carrying a few cupped handfuls back to drip onto Mark's cracked lips. "Drink, sir. Don't sleep. Don't fall asleep," he pleaded. Mark watched the clumsy little boy in the forest, and something inside him tightened. A painful gratitude he had forgotten long ago. He once believed the world was full of betrayal, that kindness was a luxury. Yet now, a child who owed him nothing was risking everything to save him from certain death. After nearly an hour, the rusty lock finally cracked. The chain loosened and fell to the ground with a metallic crash. Mark collapsed, his legs so numb they barely felt alive. Noah hurried to support him, though the boy's small frame was hardly enough to steady him. For a moment, the Red Creek forest seemed to hold its breath. A dirty, barefoot child had just pulled a biker, someone the town would fear on sight, back from the edge of death. But to Noah, he was simply a man who desperately needed help. Night fell faster than Noah expected. The purple and orange streaks of sunset were swallowed by darkness pouring over the pine forest. The wind grew cold, insects buzzing like an unsettling soundtrack. Mark still couldn't stand, so Noah propped him against the tree, then made several more trips to the creek, bringing water back. Every time the cool water touched his cracked lips, Mark felt a spark of hope ignite. "What's your name, kid?" Mark asked, his voice steadier. "Noah." "Noah, do you know what you just did? If they come back, I'll hide. But I can't let you die here." The simplicity of that answer stunned Mark. He had seen people turn on each other for a few dollars, seen brothers betray each other for power. Yet here was a child who had nothing, risking himself just to avoid living with the guilt of knowing and not helping. From afar, a faint engine sound drifted through the trees, first soft, then growing, like thunder rolling across the horizon. Noah panicked, eyes widening. "They're coming back, aren't they?" Mark tilted his head, listening. He recognized the engines instantly. The sound had followed him his whole life. "No," he whispered, a tired smile tugging at his lips. "They're my people." Moments later, headlights pierced through the forest, illuminating leather vests marked with the Iron Raven's logo, a steel raven spreading its wings. More than a dozen bikes rushed into the clearing, surrounding Mark and Noah. The burly, tattooed men jumped off their bikes, staring wide-eyed at their injured leader, and the barefoot boy still gripping a rusty hammer. A week had passed since that day, and Red Creek seemed to return to its usual rhythm. Long shifts at the roadside diner, heavy trucks rumbling down the highway, the trailer park glowing with scattered dim lights at night. But inside a boy and a man, everything had changed forever. Noah still went to school, still helped his mother wash dishes, and collected empty beer cans around the parking lot to sell for scrap. Every time a motorcycle roared by, he remembered Mark's blue-gray eyes under the pine tree and the sound of the chain hitting the ground. In a hospital a few towns away, Mark lay quietly in bed, his wounds stitched, but his mind restless. He thought about the years he spent diving into pointless fights, the long roads where he trusted only in violence and revenge. Then the image of a skinny, barefoot boy returning with a rusty hammer simply because "I don't want you to die there" replayed over and over in his head. Mark realized that his life had been saved not only from death, but from an empty way of living. He began changing the way he led the Iron Ravens. Fewer payback runs, more charity rides, protecting bullied kids, and helping repair homes for struggling families in small towns. He secretly sent money to help Noah and his mother, never revealing where it came from. To Mark, Noah wasn't just the boy who saved his life. He was a reminder that true kindness doesn't ask who you are. It asks what you're willing to do for someone else. The day Mark returned to Red Creek for a special event organized by the Iron Ravens, the sky was clear and bright, sunlight spilling over the worn trailer roofs. That morning, motorcycle engines began rumbling in the distance. At first just a few, then growing thick like rolling thunder. People in town pulled back their curtains, whispering, fearing trouble. But what they saw was something no one expected. Long lines of bikers stood neatly along the dirt road leading to the trailer park, helmets resting on handlebars, many holding toolboxes, wooden planks, bags of supplies. Nearly 2,000 bikes gathered, turning the dusty yard into a sea of chrome and leather. At the center, Mark stepped off his Harley, not carrying a weapon, but a small ocean blue bicycle in his hands. He walked straight to Noah's trailer, where the boy stood hiding behind his mother, eyes wide. "Hey, Noah," Mark said, his voice much warmer than the day they met in the forest. "This is for the bravest kid I've ever met." Noah looked at the bicycle, then looked up at Mark. Standing before him was no longer a dangerous man, but someone with grateful eyes and a sincere smile. Around them, the other bikers began spreading tarps, repairing roofs, fixing wooden floors, replacing windows for the trailers, and raising money to help Noah's mother pay off some debts. The poor trailer park, so used to being judged, was suddenly surrounded by an army that looked intimidating, but acted with tenderness that seemed almost unbelievable. If you've listened this far, your heart may be just like Noah's that day, surprised, warmed, and reminded that kindness still exists in this world. If this story touched you, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Angels still exist. Or tell us about a small moment that once made you believe in people again.